judges and jury commissioners will pre-screen people for time, but you don't know what you're getting into half the time, or if not all of the time. So, yeah. You know, a juror could speak to that. So, Jordan, I was wondering, I was wondering, is there anyone on your phone lines tonight not named Kareem?
Yes, absolutely. Did you hear what Vinny said about him? Oh, boy.
Just shaking my head.
Very interesting indeed. But, yes, I do, you do bring out a lot of good points. I personally like the show. You said you haven't got around to actually watching the People versus OJ, and you will eventually. But I'll tell you, it's really a good reenactment.
Well,
from what everybody says.
When you're a criminal defense attorney, and you deal with this stuff all day long, the last thing you want to do is let it, permeate your brain in your spare time. It's just like doctors watching medical shows. You've just had enough at a certain point. So, no disrespect to OJ.
But they showed Barry Scheck destroy this DNA expert when it was new in 94, 95 was just amazing because they didn't sit there with all the boring testimony. They just got right to the good stuff, and that was amazing. That how Barry Scheck dismantled him, and then he winds up shaking O.J. Simpson's hand after testifying for the prosecution. This guy, and I believe that did happen in the 95 trial. I'm not quite sure, but something like that did happen. How much of the O.J. Simpson case did you get into when it actually happened?
O.J. Went on trial, I believe it was 1994, 1995,
yes.
And I was I was in law school at the time, and it was very polarizing because we were seeing things. Well, of course, because it was on the big screen and everybody was following it. It was really a way to apply what you were learning, in real life, and done by some very masterful attorneys. I would say at least on the defense side, there were masterful attorneys.
Yes, that's all.
Or he wouldn't have gotten away with murder. But it was really interesting, and now as we see things some 20 years later kind of play out, a knife is found very recently, and it's still very fresh to a lot of people, and it's a case that definitely shaped the American justice system. I think it shaped the public's perception, and I'll tell you frankly, it shaped the face of domestic violence, because I think that was the catalyst for the court system's awareness of aggressive handling of domestic violence cases. It really changed the face of prosecution of that type of defense, where I think previously it had been blown off. And I tease clients, I say, once upon a time, there was a man who killed his ex-wife and her boyfriend. And that man forever shaped the face of, the American judicial system and domestic violence as perceived by the public. And I said his name was O.J. Simpson. And it's sad and it's harrowing, but it's very true.
Now, they also showed in this series, which I learned, which is very hard, and you probably have to deal with it. No, not probably, you do, is picking the right jury. What is, well, I don't want to say, don't want you to give me away anything, but what do you feel about, your strategy in terms of getting the right jury?
I think that picking a jury, and you can bring in all the consultants, psychologists you want, it's still somewhat of a crapshoot. It really is somewhat of a crapshoot, and I'm actually getting ready for a big trial right now, and I was meeting with part of my team today, and that's one of the things we were talking about is trying to look for demographics of potential jurors because, what happens is they come in, and most of the time you just get a slip of paper and you'll get some basic biographical information and there's some questions. In the more complex cases like mine, there will be a jury questionnaire, and we'll have an opportunity to go through some of their answers prior to interviewing them. But at the end of the day, it's a crapshoot, and you try to feel people out. There's a lot of techniques, and there's a lot of, very well put together seminars, but, you never really know. For me personally, I do use social media.
Really?
If people have open Facebook accounts or Twitter or LinkedIn accounts, among other things, you try to learn as much as possible about people. But I think, Jordan, what the public needs to realize is whoever I love to be on my jury, the prosecutor's going to hate. Whoever they love, I'm going to hate. So you're kind of left with the people who are in the middle, and that's where you really got to get to work and try and find those people who will give your client a fighting shot. There's no science to it. There's no magic to it. There's sometimes you read them right. There's sometimes you read them wrong. The only way you really know that is by talking to the jurors after the trial is over if they are receptive to that. And sometimes you'll make connections with people during voir dire, which is the jury selection process. Body language. It's absolutely how they interact with you. I always like to have a second and third set of eyes minimum to help me with that because it's very important. And this is someone who's deciding your client's fate. So you want to do your very best, but there's no magic or science to it. A lot of people will try and sell you a magic formula for that, but it's just not there. It's just not there. And I picked a hell of a lot of juries over the years. So.
Absolutely. Okay, let's say hello to Mary. She's calling from Virginia, and she's on King Jordan Radio. Good evening, Mary. How are you?
Hi. How are you, Jordan? How are you, Mr. Lamm?
Hi, Mary. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. Well, I have a question on Hulk Hogan. I can't believe I'm even asking the question, but
do you really, Mary? Do you really want to know if Hulk Hogan had a 10-inch penis? Is that your question?
No.
Because I don't know.
No,
okay,
mine
good. I was getting
strictly
scared.
a financial matter. I don't understand how in the world did this jury award him $100 million for compensatory damages. And what I wanted to find out from you was what is the criteria that jurors use to determine what the damages should be? Do they figure his age, his earning potential, the financial status of the defendant in this matter? How did they get $100 million? I looked him up. He's 62. It took him 35 years to earn $25 million, which is what he's worth right now. How do they figure that he should be compensated $100 million when he probably only has maybe 10, 15 years left to make any money from his career?
First off, Mary, and I don't mean to pry, into your business, but if he only does have 15 years left and he gets that $140 million, you might want to see if he's still single. I know he got divorced not too long ago.
No, I would not want him. Sorry. I would not want him, and I am married.
Fair enough. Well, to get to your point, they don't really look at a defendant's worth. That's more punitive damages.
Okay.
No, punitive damages are to punish. Now, I don't know what his attorneys asked for, but I'm sure there was an emotional distress component to it, maybe some lost wages typically. I don't know that this isn't a case where we had any, permanent physical injuries or anything of that nature. So, yeah, it does seem like a very inflated verdict. And, to have the audacity to ask for $100 million, that takes a big pair of, balls to get to that. Yes, it does seem very inflated. It does seem outrageous. And, frankly, I share your outrage because I don't know how it's rationally connected to any damages. So, I do think there was some emotion in there. But one of the things that the trial judge is going to look at, and it's called a motion for remitter to lower the verdict, is whether or not there's a reasonable relationship. Could the jury have rationally come to that amount? Now, I have no doubt that Hulk Hogan's attorneys, laid out some type of formula to get in that ballpark, or to at least empower the jury to make, an award consistent with, what they were requesting. But I'll tell you, quite frankly, I have a very, very dear friend who's a brilliant, masterful trial attorney. He's a personal injury attorney. And if my recollection is, they were asking for $5 million, and it was a wrongful death case, and it was egregious. And the jury awarded $7 million. But
right.
It's because they were so offended by the defense attorney saying that, a life is not really worth anything. And I'm paraphrasing, and it wasn't my case. I know enough just to speak about it. And, yeah, I think they kicked the defendant's ass because of that. Now, did Gawker and, the other defendants perhaps inflame the jury? Sure. I know there was some deposition testimony as how young is too young to publish a nude child. And Jordan, help me out a little bit if I'm getting those facts wrong. And the answer was 4 years old. Oh, so it's fair game to publish a nude photo of a 5-year-old.
That's crazy.
Well, I mean, sure, Mary, but when you get stupid answers like that, you're going to piss off a jury, and you're going to give them license to kick your butt.
Right, that's what Walker answered, right.
So, I don't know that there's a rational connection to the compensatory damages, and I'd probably say to you that there wasn't, that it was emotionally driven.
So it can't be. So his stress or his emotional suffering enters into the compensatory part rather than the punitive.
Sure, punitive is to punish. Compensatory is to compensate you or to make you whole. And again, I haven't seen the initial lawsuit that was filed, but to compensate you for emotional trauma, lost wages, lost consortium, which is essentially intimate relations. That's a whole other can of worms on that last one, and I won't go there unless you ask me.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder if his wife can now sue him for emotional distress from what he put her through.
Are we referring to Bubba's wife, the woman he was having sex
not
with,
her.
Hulk Hogan?
Yeah, Mrs. Hogan, yes.
Well,
he
they're
broke
divorced.
up with that wife, and he's with another wife since that video.
Yeah, the ex-wife is thinking, damn, I should have held on just a little bit longer, and I would have hit power.
She's kicking herself in the butt.
They all look alike.
And just one more question, comparing that to the O.J. Simpson wrongful death, how come the Goldmans and the Browns have never seen a penny of it, of what they were awarded?
Well, that's one of the big issues that frustrates them so much, is because O.J. was hiding assets and manipulating finances, so they could never really get their hands on it, and that's always a big issue. It's look, someone who's 18 years old with no job and no insurance, in a car gets in this horrific accident and tragically, hurts your loved one. Great. You can sue them for all you want, but you're getting blood from a rock. So it's one thing to get a judgment. It's a whole other thing to collect on it.
Yeah, I understand. But I know the law just takes so long. But, I mean, it seems to me that he had money to go play golf every weekend, and he had his mansion, and he still had his limousines and all that. And to me, that once it's awarded and all the appeals are done, then you go in and you take that limousine and you make him sell his house and you take care of all of that so that judgment can start getting paid.
Right,
because
I agree with you.
He was living a life of luxury all these 20 years.
Well, but it was probably on assets that were not his, and rented houses and rented vehicles. He basically made himself judgment-proof. And there's a whole area of law known as basically asset protection. People protect assets from bankruptcy and litigation. And it's a very valid area of law. But unfortunately, you get people every once in a while, like OJ, who use it for nefarious purposes, and it really perverts the